I want you to picture the ultimate, the ultimate cinematic con man. You probably have an image in your head already.
Oh, absolutely. The tailored suits, the charm.
Right. A brilliant teenager, just effortlessly charming, evading the FBI across, 26 countries?
Yep, that's the legend.
He's posing as a Pan Am pilot, stepping off a jet in a crisp uniform. Then he's a respected doctor in a bustling hospital ward. Then a hotshot lawyer. And all the while, he's just cashing millions of dollars in seamlessly forged checks.
I mean, it is quite literally the exact plot of Catch Me If You Can.
Exactly. And the myth tells us he achieved all of this in the 1960s by masterfully manipulating a magnetic ink encoder, which, just for context, was essentially the cutting-edge cryptographic security of the banking system at the time.
Right, it was high-tech stuff for the era.
But here's where we need to stop and ask a really massive reality-breaking question. What if the world's most famous con man pulled off his greatest scam, not by defeating high-tech banking security, but by, fabricating the entire story of those crimes?
Like just making it all up.
Yeah. Fabricating it all to sell books, movie rights, and a $1 million consulting career.
It's the ultimate paradox, really, and that's exactly the mission for our deep dive today. We're going to take a stack of public records, historical documents, and years of really solid investigative journalism and use them to completely dismantle the legendary biography of Frank Abagnale.
Because when you strip away the Hollywood gloss, right, and look at the actual historical record, what you find is just entirely different from the myth.
Completely different.
So we're going to look at his life not as the silver screen legend portrays it, but exactly how it happened. And as you are going to see, the real story is darker, far less glamorous, yet I think infinitely more fascinating.
Because it reveals just how willing society is to believe a good lie.
Yes, exactly.
The contrast between the scale of the myth and the reality of the man is just striking. But before we can even begin to understand how Abagnale fooled the world, we have to look at the actual origins of his criminal record.
Right where it all started.
Yeah, and they were remarkably uncinematic.
I mean, the real start of his quote-unquote criminal empire wasn't some grand heist at all. According to his own early autobiography, his first fraud was taking a gasoline credit card his father gave him and charging $3,400 to it.
Right.
Which got him sent to a reform school run by Catholic Charities in New York.
Yeah, and from there, the timeline of his early years is really just a series of brief, failed starts and pretty petty offenses. So in December 1964, at age 16, he enlists in the U.S. Navy.
Okay, the Navy.
But he doesn't stay. He's actually discharged after less than 3 months, released in February 1965. And literally less than 2 weeks later, he is arrested for petty larceny in Mount Vernon, New York.
Okay, wait, I need to stop you there because the Mount Vernon incident in March 1965 is where the contrast between the myth and the reality just smacks you in the face.
It really does.
He poses as a police officer to get into a woman's apartment, claiming he is investigating her daughter. The woman, gets suspicious and calls the real cops. And what do they find when they arrest this future international mastermind?
Oh, this is the best part.
They find him holding a toy gun and wearing a paper badge. A paper badge. He gets hit with a vagrancy charge and is committed to Grassland's Psychiatric Institute for observation.
A literal toy gun.
Yeah. And then, just a few months later in June, he is arrested in California by the FBI for stealing a Ford Mustang. But he didn't, steal it from a high-security vault or a dealership.
No, of course not.
He stole it from his father's neighbor. And he financed his road trip with blank checks he stole from a local Bronx family business.
And if you look at those specific details, you start to see the real foundational architecture of his actual methods. I mean, there is no high-level social engineering happening here.
Right.
There's no international jet setting. He wasn't executing this brilliant systemic fraud against massive faceless banking institution.
Oh, no, not at all.
He was committing opportunistic petty theft, and his primary targets were, his own family, his neighbors, and local small businesses.
It is so wild. It's like comparing a teenager playing a clumsy game of dress-up to, the sophisticated heists of Ocean's 11.
That's a perfect analogy.
I mean, how does a kid with a paper badge and a toy gun leap to becoming an international mastermind evading the world's top intelligence agencies?
Well, the short answer is he never made that leap.
Right.
That opportunistic, petty mindset remained his core pattern, which introduces a fundamental problem with the entire narrative we've all been sold.
It completely blows up the timeline.
Yeah.
Because think about it. If he was stealing his neighbor's Mustang in New York in the summer of 1965.
Wow.
When exactly was he flying around the world as a Pan Am pilot?
Exactly.
When was he practicing medicine in Georgia as a teenager? It just doesn't fit.
And this is a question that went largely unasked by the general public until, relatively recently. To understand where Abagnale actually was during his quote-unquote missing years, we have to look at the work of author Alan C. Logan.
Okay, what did he find?
Well, in 2020, Logan published an investigation titled The Greatest Hoax on Earth. And Logan didn't just rely on anecdotes or interviews. He went straight to the New York State Archives to pull the actual physical records.
Wait, are you saying the globe-trotting years, the era where the movie shows him gracefully evading Tom Hanks in France, or managing dozens of nurses in a bustling hospital ward?
He was actually somewhere else.
He was somewhere else entirely.
Yeah, he was locked in a cell in upstate New York.
You have got to be kidding me.
Logan's bombshell revelation, which is backed by irrefutable prison documents, proved that between July 26, 1965 and December 24, 1968, Frank Abagnale was sitting in Great Meadow Correctional Facility as inmate number 25367.
That is just staggering.
It really changes everything.
The precise years he claimed to be committing his most famous globe-trotting frauds, cashing millions in checks. He was literally behind bars for a teenage car theft conviction.
It really highlights the sheer audacity of the lie. Logan's research comprehensively proved that the greatest hoax wasn't Abagnale's string of crimes. The greatest hoax was the autobiography he wrote about them.
Wow.
He simply took the years he was incarcerated and filled that void with a fantasy.
Okay, so he didn't invent his criminal past entirely from scratch, right? He just vastly inflated it.
Right, there were real crimes, just not the ones we thought.
So when he was finally out of prison, what did his actual crimes look like? And I guess more importantly, who did they hurt?
Well, once he is released from Great Meadow on Christmas Eve in 1968, he does reoffend. He moves to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and he actually does pose as a TWA pilot.
Okay, so there's the pilot thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
He befriends a local minister who introduces him to a host family and local faculty, but the deception doesn't last long at all. The minister gets suspicious, calls TWA, and Abagnale is arrested by February 1969.
And the details of that arrest are so telling. He was driving a rental car out of state and had falsified airline ID. But detectives found he had also stolen blank checks from the very host family that took him in,
Yeah.
as well as a local business. I mean, he's convicted of theft and forgery, gets 12 years of supervised probation, and immediately flees to Europe.
Right, where his spree is, once again, short-lived and utterly mundane.
Right.
2 weeks after a warrant is issued in Louisiana, he is arrested in France for stealing a car and defrauding 2 families in Sweden.
Again, with the families.
Always. He serves months in French and Swedish prisons before being deported back to the United States in June 1970.
Okay, but what about the famous Pan Am check fraud? Like the $2.5 million he supposedly stole from the airlines. That's the core of the myth.
Well, the fraud was real, but the scale was entirely fabricated.
Shocker.
After returning to the U.S., he was arrested in Georgia in late 1970 after cashing fake Pan Am payroll checks across 5 states. Do you want to know the actual total of those forged checks?
I'm bracing myself. How much?
Less than $1,500.
$1,500, not $2.5 million.
Nope. Less than $1,500. And for that, he was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison, plus an additional 2 years because he temporarily escaped from the Cobb County Jail.
That is insane.
Yeah.
And, there's a much darker side to this that the pop culture narrative completely sanitizes.
Absolutely.
We picture this charming rogue sneaking into places he doesn't belong, and it's played for laughs. But the reality of his time posing as a pilot and a doctor was actually predatory.
It really was.
In 1970, at the University of Arizona, he posed as a pilot and a physician to conduct physical exams on 12 female college students, telling them it was for a flight attendant recruitment program.
It is a deeply disturbing incident, and it forces us to reevaluate his entire legacy.
Yeah, completely.
This wasn't a victimless prank against some faceless corporation. University officials confirmed these interactions happened.
It's off.
Louisiana State University journalism professor Robert Mann, who had previously covered an Abagnale lecture without challenging him, later wrote about his deep regret. He actually said, "Reading those words now in which Abagnale bragged about sexual abuse makes me sick."
Wow.
We have to center the actual victims here. A real victim of his theft, Charlotte Parks from Baton Rouge, gave an interview in 1981 that perfectly captures the true collateral damage. She said, "He had a key to our front door. I fed him. I cooked. I don't trust people as much anymore."
Man, that quote is heartbreaking.
It is.
We get so caught up in the cleverness of a grift that we forget the profound emotional damage and the deep violation of trust left in the wake of a con man. It is not a victimless crime when you are stealing from the families who invite you into their homes.
Exactly. And that emotional manipulation, the ability to exploit human trust is the exact mechanism he used to launch the next chapter of his life. After serving about 2 years of his federal sentence, he is paroled in 1974. And almost immediately, he begins the process of transforming his string of petty thefts and betrayed host families into a highly lucrative corporate myth.
So he gets out,
Right.
and initially, he's still running minor scams, right?
Yeah, old habits.
He gets arrested at a summer camp in Texas for stealing cameras from coworkers. He gets fired from an insurance company and sued for check fraud. But then, in 1975, he makes this ultimate pivot.
A huge pivot.
He approaches banks and offers to educate their staff on check forgery techniques. He says, hey, if it's not helpful, you owe me nothing. If it is, pay me a modest fee and recommend me.
And it was an undeniably brilliant pivot. I mean, to understand how he pulled this off, you have to look at the psychology of authority bias.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, he realized that if you present yourself as a confident expert to a bureaucracy, the bureaucracy will rarely verify your credentials because doing so requires extra work.
Right, people are basically lazy.
Exactly. By 1976, he founds Abagnale and Associates, a consulting firm advising corporations and government agencies on fraud prevention. But he couldn't just sell himself as a minor petty thief who got caught repeatedly.
No, that doesn't sell.
He needed a resume. So he began to falsify his professional background, claiming prior work with the Los Angeles Police Department and Scotland Yard.
Wait, the LAPD and
Yeah.
Scotland Yard.
Yep.
He essentially realized that a corporate resume is just another blank check. You can write whatever value you want on it, and as long as you hand it over with enough confidence, the bank, or in this case the entire corporate world, will just cash it.
That's a great way to put it.
The escalation of his lies over the decades is just mind-boggling. I mean, what else did he claim?
Oh, the claims grew more outrageous with every audience he spoke to. He began telling people he had passed the Louisiana bar examination and worked for State Attorney General Jack Gramillion.
A lawyer, too, of course.
Supposedly closing 33 cases, he claimed he taught sociology at Brigham Young University for 2 semesters. And most prominently, he claimed an extensive, highly decorated relationship with the FBI.
Okay, the FBI claims were wild. He said he was on the 10 most wanted list as a teenager.
Right.
He claimed he was granted special parole to do undercover work for the Bureau, receiving assignments directly from FBI Director Clarence Kelly. By 2014, he was standing on stages celebrating his, quote-unquote, 38 years at the FBI.
And literally none of it holds up to scrutiny. When investigators checked the Louisiana State Bar, there was absolutely no record of him.
Surprise, surprise.
The State Attorney General's office found zero trace of him in their payroll. The BYU claim completely fell apart on live television in 2006 when journalist Scott Hawes confronted him with his own published materials making the claim.
Oh, to his face.
Yes. Abagnale had to backtrack and say he may have been a guest lecturer.
May have been.
Right.
And the FBI agents themselves called him out eventually, right?
Oh, yeah. Retired FBI agent Jerry Williams, who is a white-collar crime specialist, was incredibly blunt. She said, if anybody tells you that they got an assignment directly from the FBI director, you know for a fact it's bullshit. It doesn't happen that way.
Wow, she didn't mince words.
Not at all. He was never on the most wanted list, which he eventually had to admit in the fine print of his company's website. And the retired agent who supposedly led the Atlanta division when Abagnale claimed to be a pediatrician there, Eugene Stewart, described Abagnale as nothing more than a low-level criminal.
Ouch.
Even his arrests were routine, not the dramatic cinematic escapes he sold to the public.
Okay, so here's the million-dollar question. If the facts were this easily verifiable, like if anyone could just call the Louisiana bar or check the New York State prison archives, why did the myth survive for nearly 40 years?
That is honestly the most profound part of this entire deep dive, because journalists did try to expose him very early on. The public record was always there.
Wait, really? Early on?
Yes. As early as 1978, people were looking into this. The Louisiana First Assistant Attorney General at the time, Kenneth C. Dijon, explicitly stated after looking at Abagnale's claims, he said, "The man is not an imposter, he is a liar. The truth was out there."
I mean, put yourself in the shoes of a bank manager or an event coordinator for a major corporation.
Yeah.
You are hiring a man whose entire literal job is background checks and fraud prevention, and you failed to do a basic background check on him.
That's unbelievable irony.
Institutions just ignored the truth. He was commanding $20,000 to $30,000 per speaking gig. He was named the AARP's Fraud Watch Ambassador.
Yep.
He hosted their Perfect Scam podcast. In 2022, Xavier University in Cincinnati actually gave him a Heroes in Ethics Award.
What?
An ethics award. How does that even happen?
Well, it perfectly illustrates our deep cultural vulnerability to a specific type of narrative, the charming rogue redemption story.
Yeah, people love that.
We wanted the Spielberg movie to be true. The idea of a brilliant kid outsmarting the system who then turns his life around to protect us from the bad guys, it is intoxicating.
It feels good to believe.
It really does. So nobody bothered to check the state prison archives because the truth, a troubled teenager stealing from his neighbors and ending up in a grim state facility is depressing. The myth is entertaining.
Yeah, that makes sense. But when he is finally confronted, like really cornered with the physical evidence, his reaction tells you everything you need to know about his mindset.
Oh, absolutely.
In 2022, investigative journalist Javier Leyva independently verified all of Alan C. Logan's findings about the prison records and the vastly inflated claims.
Yeah.
And Leyva walked right up to Abagnale at a conference in Las Vegas, literally holding the actual court and prison records.
And Abagnale's response at that conference and later at the Xavier University event when an audience member challenged him was just total denial.
He just denied it.
Yeah, he refused to take responsibility, claiming he didn't write the book, he didn't make the movie, he didn't write the Broadway musical. He completely deflected.
Even though his entire consulting career, his staggering speaking fees, and his public persona were built squarely on the foundation of that legend.
Exactly.
It is the ultimate sleight of hand. Based on everything we've looked at today, Frank Abagnale was indeed one of the most successful con artists of the 20th century. But not because he forged millions of dollars in checks, or because he successfully flew commercial jets, or outsmarted the entire FBI.
No, not at all.
He is the greatest con man because he successfully conned the world, the media, major corporations, and all of us into believing that a Hollywood script was a documentary.
It really is something. And I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive.
Sure, what is it?
Well, we look back at the 1970s and 1980s and marvel at how easily people were fooled before the internet. But in our modern era of constant information, of deepfakes, and intense real-time fact-checking, how many other foundational true stories in our culture, the ones we just accept without question, are actually just the result of a charismatic person telling a bold lie to an audience that was simply too entertained to ask for proof?
Man, that is a chilling thought. The next time you hear a story that sounds like it was written for the movies, maybe take a second to look for the jagged white line on the X-ray. Question the perfect stories you encounter. Keep digging, keep learning, and we will see you on the next deep dive.